So now that we have this tool that's going to allow us to run our queries as we're running these tests, let's kill this for a second. And we're going to start out in the workshop. We had an exercise which was to find movies that have the word car in their title. So we can go over here and we'll put in cars. And this is not going to be an aggregate query. We're not going to be counting anything. We're going to actually select name from movies where movie's name is like, and this is going to be the wildcard CAR, and that's going to be our query. And I'm just going to keep this number here, but now we're just going to get an array of results. So let's look at the length. When we were just doing counting, we only ended up getting one result set. So now, again, if we want to do this, we could just run our car. And this is going to fail. So here you can see all the movies that end up having car in them. But we're really going to have this many. So we'll go back, and again, we could look at the results. We could see that our results were correct. This will end up passing. And we could even go back in and just to show you how to use these parameters, we could go in here and take this, paste it in here in my array. And again, this is what SQLite allows you to do this. And what it'll do is that for however many placeholders or question marks you have here, it'll end up replacing them with a parameter here, and this should still end up passing. All right, so we've got the information about our query, what our results are, and that sort of thing. So let's now look at our next query that we're going to do. So this is going to be a fairly simple one. This is going to be the count of movies in 1982. Right, so again, I'm just going to do a copy and paste here. You can see how convenient this could get in terms of running the queries. We'll call this 1982. And we're going to specify, let's try to fix these titles up. Many movies with the letters CAR. Okay, and for this one, for 1982, we'll figure out what the exact numbers are. And one thing that you might actually do, if you were actually working with to really test out a database, you might start out with an empty database and add some data to it so your results wouldn't seem quite random. Not that they're random, but you just have a lot of data and you're not sure what the answers are until you run the query. So what we're going to do here is we're going to count. We'll say as count. We'll say from movies. And we're going to group by year. We could do that, or I think we could just use a where clause. And I'm going to use we're just counting up the result set that we get. And this is going to be 1982. And I'm going to kill this and run it again with 1982. Again, just trying to eliminate the noise from each of the queries. So this is not quite what we expected. Actually, it is, because we're getting this object back here, which again is just the one result set. That's why one is coming back. What we actually want to do here, say 0, And this is going to be count, and we'll see what this number is. All right, so this is actually our number from 1982. Go back in here, and again, the thing that really tells us what our query is correct is looking at these results, but the test will come in pretty handy as well. So we have another one here, which is also similar. We're not really doing grouping yet. We're keeping this fairly simple. So these are going to be actors that have stack in their last name. So we'll say stackers. And let's see what this comes out to be. I ran this before. I ended up getting 47. Let's see if that's right. So we'll say there are 47 stackers. Say 47. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do simple where here to say select actors.firstname, actors.lastname from the actors table, where actors.lastname will say like, and this will be percentage stack. And you could kill this, go back here, stackers. No such column actors last name. That's correct. So that's good. We have our error message coming up, which is going to help us out here. And there's a problem here in our select. All right, so this is with underscores. All right, so now we get, here are all the actors that have stack in their last name, and this will end up passing. So the next one that we're going to do is here we're going to end up doing some grouping. So what we want to do is find out the most popular boys' names in the industry. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up looping. Actually, we're finding out a first name and a last name. So we've got fame name for a first name and the fame name for a last name. So we'll go over here. And this one will get a little more specific with the results because we know what they are. And this is going to be fame name first. And for this, we expect our result 0 dot first name to equal John. Again, it won't off the bat, but let's kill this. And this is going to be fame name and this is not going to give us the correct values. Let's go back up here. And what we're going to be able to do here is we're going to end up selecting actors.firstname. We'll also get the count as count. And we will get this from the actors table. But we're going to group by, since we want to basically find all the people with the same first name, put them in the same bucket, we're going to group by actors.firstname. And that's the way that I like to think about the grouping. It's pretty much taking all these first names and grouping them together. So all the Johns are going to be in one bucket. And now you can count up, all the Johns that are in that bucket along with any other name that you have in the actors table. And we're going to want to get the most popular. So we could order by count descending. Now, either one of these will work. So we could count descending, and we're only going to want to get 10 of these, or else we'll end up timing out here. And let's actually give the right message. And if we go back over here, SQLite error, near actors, and let's just take a look and see what our error is here. So there is it's not just group, it's group by, and this should end up passing. And if we're going to do the fame name last, these could all be copied. And we'll say fame name last. And here, let's just grab the last name, group by the last name. Most popular last name is Smith. So we'll say last name. This should fail. It's not John, it's going to be Smith. And let's kill this. And we could actually just put a string here, fame name last. So we expected Smith, right, to be equal to John. And this is going to be Smith, and then this will pass. Okay, so let's move down to our next query. So for this one, what we want to do is we want to get what would be considered prolific actors, right? So the 10 most prolific actors, and let's actually set this up. This is a little bit more complicated than the other ones that we looked at. But we're going to build this out a little bit at a time here. And we're going to say this is going to be prolific. And we know from looking at the results, the most prolific actor should be Mel Blanc. Most prolific is Mel Blanc, in which case, it's with a C, I think. But let's actually specify the last name is going to be blank. Now, if we run this, let's kill this, and we're going to run prolific. So now let's run this query. Now, so this query is going to, the way that I set it up, it's going to have two different parts to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the most prolific actors as well as the number of movies they did by looking at the roles table. So I'm going to select, figure out what we're going to select in a second, but I'm going to say from roles. And I'm going to group on the roles table. So I'm going to group by actor ID. And what am I going to select? I'm going to select the actor ID. I'm going to say count star as count. I'm going to group by actor ID, and then I'm going to order the results to get the most active ones by count descending. So if I just did this, so one of the problems that I'm going to run into here is that I'm not getting any results right here, and that has to do with the fact that the amount of time ended up getting exceeded for this query. Let's actually just make sure that that's the case. And it is, and part of the reason why that is the case is that I really do also want to limit this. So let me actually go down here, and I'm going to limit the first 10. Maybe we did the first 100, the first 10. Okay, so you can see my results here. These are actually the most prolific actors, but I really need to join them up with their movies. There's two different ways that you could do this. Excuse me, I need to join them up with their names. I could end up doing this. Here's my roles table, and I could end up join actors on roles.actorID equals actors.id. And I could end up getting the actors.firstname and actors.lastname. Okay? So I could end up doing that join to get the most prolific actors. Now let's just see what happens here. I've got a problem. My problem is that this query is taking a long time. The fact that I'm doing these joins on this big table makes this kind of slow. Now, one thing that I could do here is that I could give myself a bit more time. So you actually have access to this object, and I could specify, look, my timeout, I want to change it. I'm going to make it 10 seconds instead of 2 seconds. And let me just spell that correctly. And if I give it enough time, and let's see if I need to give it a little more time. Okay, so this ends up passing, but you can see that it takes an incredibly long time to get these results. And there could also be ways that you could actually get some results in SQLite. I'm not totally familiar with the API. It might be a way to sort of stream some results back. But we could solve a good chunk of this problem by not doing our join on the actors here, but just by going in and selecting the ID and the count. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a subquery. So I'm going to take this query, and I'm going to give it a name, like creating its own table from it. And I'm going to call this prolific actors. And what I'm going to be able to do now is to select actors.firstname, actors.lastname, and let me also specify prolific actors.count from actors, and I'm going to join up with this query that I have here, and I'm going to join up on prolific actors actor ID, that's what I have from this table, actor ID equals actors.id. Let's just see what that looks like. Let's see if that's a little bit faster. So you can actually see it's a lot faster, right? I'm still above by 2 seconds, so I am gonna still put this at 3,000. But you can see how your query could end up getting quite a bit faster, right, by modifying how the joins end up getting done. Here, again, I'm getting a small subset that I have to do the joins on. So it's not a huge table that I'm doing the joins on, right? I've grouped things together, so it's a much smaller set that I have to do here. So let's do another one here. This one we're going to look at, this is the bottom of the barrel. So this is going to be that we want to group the movies by genre and find out the least popular genre. So I'm going to copy this. We're going to call this bottom of barrel. And what we're going to expect to get here is that when we go to the bottom of the barrel, film noir is on the bottom. So is the least popular. So what I expect is the genre from this genre to be equal to film noir. And the way that we're going to do that, let me take this time out here. I'm only going to do that if I need it. But we're going to go over here and we're going to select genre and count. Say as count on from movies genres. And we're going to group by the genre. In this case, the genre is just a string. We're going to order by the count. And we're going to limit this to 10. All right, in this case, we're actually going to want to go in ascending order because this we want to be the least popular one. I think it should be about 440 or something. And let's kill this. And let's say bottom, the bottom of the barrel. And we've got film noir that's at 417. So again, we see our results. See, this query ended up running relatively quickly here, which is good. So let's continue on with our next query that we're going to run. And this is going to be the cast from the movie Braveheart. So let's actually call this Braveheart. And by looking at the results, we're going to specify here. There are other ways you could run this test, but the first cast member, if we order it by last name, is Allen, spelled like that. So we'll say first name to be equal to Allen. Now again, if we kill this, change this to Braveheart. This will end up failing because we're not actually even getting a first name here. But let's actually go in and get some results here that make a little bit more sense. So we're going to need to select from the actors table you could leave out, if the only column, if there's no other first names and last names, you could actually leave these off. We're going to get these from the actors table. So we're going to join from the actors table to roles on roles.actor.id equals actors.id. And the critical one is we're going to join to the movies on roles.movieid equals movies.id. And the key thing here is we're going to have a where clause where movies.name, and we'll use our placeholders. And there's two Bravehearts, so we'll say movies.year is equal to another one. Now let's actually even put in here, this is going to be Braveheart in 1995. So we could go in here and put in Braveheart, put in 1995. And the other thing that we're going to have to do here, if we did this, it's possible it'll pass. Yeah, it does pass, and I guess that just is because this guy is already in order. But if we scroll up here, we could look and see, here's our guy, and it's probably ordered by last name. Just to be safe. Let's order it by actor's last name, and we should end up getting the same results. Okay. So the next one we're going to do is the Kevin Bacon one. Actually, no, we have one more before that. We're going to do this leap year one, which is going to tell us all the directors who and the movies that they directed, if in fact the movie was in a leap year. So what we're going to have to do is, and this is going to be based on genre too. So we're going to look at movies. We're going to have to know the year of the movie. We're going to have to know the genre of the movie. And we're going to have to use an operator to determine that the year was in fact a leap year. And let's see, been doing this before. I know what the results are supposed to be. So let's do this. We'll set up our test. And this is going to be Leap Noir. And the first movie result is called an act of violence. Is act of violence. So this is going to be the name of the movie. It's going to be equal to act of violence. The only parameter that we're going to pass in here is going to be our genre. This is going to be film noir. And what we're going to do here is do our joins here. So we're going to select, in this case, a director's first name, a director's last name, movie's name, movie's year. So we'll start off by looking at movies. We're going to connect movies underscore genres on movies.id equals movies genres movie ID. We're going to end up joining on movies directors on movies directors, which gives us the movie IDs for the directors. So we'll take that movie ID, set it equal to the movie's ID, and this now gives us the ability to get our directors, and our directors on directors ID equals movies, directors, director ID. And we're going to have to put a where clause here. Where what? Well, where the movies dot year, and we're going to end up using the modulus function. Modulus of 4 is equal to 0, and the movies genres dot genre, which is a string, is equal to a question mark. So we kill this. We'll say this is going to be leap, and this is what ends up passing, and we have our results up here. So that looks pretty good. And let's move on from there. This is our Kevin Bacon one, which is pretty lengthy. Let's again go over here. We'll copy this. And this is going to be bacon. And what we're expecting here is when we end up putting these in order, first castmate is Alan, so we expect results dot, this is his last name, to be equal to Alan, and I think the movie, I think is going to be Apollo 13. Yeah, so the first movie, these are all the people that worked with him on a specific genre. And so the movie is Apollo 13. So we'll go over here, and let's start writing out this query. So we're going to break this up into two parts. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get all of Kevin Bacon's dramas. And the way that we're going to do that is we'll select movies ID. I'm just going to call this ID. And movies.name as name. And we're going to get this from movies. Movies we know we could join on roles. So in order to get the movies from a person, we have to go through the roles, where movies ID equals roles, movie ID. And we could go from here to actors on actors.id equals roles.actor ID. And then we could join on movies genres, and it's movies genres dot movie ID is movies ID. And now we could put our where clause in here to say that where actors dot first name is equal to Kevin, and actors dot last name is equal to Bacon, and movies genres, the genre of the movie's genre, which is a string, is going to be drama. If we were just to do that, and we were to take a look at our results here, let's kill this. That was our last test. This is going to be bacon. Okay, so let's take a look at that error. Okay, so this is blowing up because this is going to be actor's first name. Let's take a look, start this up again. So this ends up, we run into a timeout problem here. Let's increase our timeout. Let's set it to 5 seconds. Let's give it a little more time. Let's give this one more shot. Let's go really high over here. It's a little bit weird. I'm trying to think if I'm missing a join here. Okay, so it's taking 11 seconds. First cast made is Alan. Let's just see. We don't have any results. Let's take a look. We should have some results here. Let's take a look. So here, the mistake was that the first name is Kevin and the last name is Bacon. Now we've actually got his movies. Now we actually have to do a join. So now we've got all of his movies. Now we could go over here and we could say as Kevin's movies. Now we could find all the other people that have been in those movies. So we could say select actors dot first name as first name, actors dot last name as last name, and we could say Kevin's movies dot name. I don't think I need these aliases. I'm going to take them out here. Let me just do my joins. So I'm selecting this from roles. I'm joining this. So now I've got the movies, I'm connecting to the roles, and then I could say on Kevin's movies dot ID equals roles dot movie ID. And I'm going to also need my actors. So I need to join actors on actors.id equals roles.actor ID. Let's see what those results look like. So you do get into a scenario where if you do have a compound select here, meaning a table and a name, when you end up using the SQL module, you'll get these properties, which is, in our case, Kevin's movies.name. If you don't want that, you could alias it. And we could say as name. If I run this again, I should end up getting this one to pass. So again, this is this inner query. I had to increase the timeout. It's definitely a bit slower, but this ends up passing. Now let's take a look at another one. So here's one more that we could take a look at. And this also I had to add the timeout to. But this is the one where you're trying to find the actors that ended up acting before 1900 and after 1900. I ended up breaking this up into smaller queries to get it to run at a reasonable amount of time. So all of these by themselves are pretty small. Here we're getting the actors. Let's actually start out here. Here we're getting the actors that acted before 1900. And here we're getting the actors that acted after 2000. And what we end up doing here is we end up joining these guys together. And so we've got these two queries. Let's actually bring this in so we can see this a little bit better. Right, so we've got this query over here. We'll call this actors that have acted over those two time periods. And all we have at this point is we've got the actors' IDs, and then we end up doing a join on the actor's ID. So we put these two queries together. Again, the ones after 2000 joining with the ones before 2000 on actor ID. We end up getting this intermediate query here. And then we end up selecting, we end up then joining to the actors table where we could get the first and the last name. And here, the only thing I did, I knew one of these was going to be Kofi. So I ended up using my map function just to get the first name. And this will end up passing. And you can see it takes a little bit of time. I had to increase the timeout here, but it does end up passing. And if you wanted to, you could also run this in the shell. I was doing this as well, just to see if there was something that I was missing. And if we went ahead and ran this in the shell, it still is going to take a little while to run, right? About the same period of time. So that's the last query we're going to take a look at. I'll take the other ones, but I'll put them up with the solution.